I always thought the world would end in silence. Not the kind of silence you get in a library, or when snow falls so thick that you can't even hear your own boots crunching. I mean the silence that comes when the current stops humming through the wires, when every refrigerator and streetlight and phone tower exhales for the last time. That silence was what I'd been waiting for, preparing for, obsessing over. I live on the outskirts of Scranton, Pennsylvania, in a 2-story brick house that I inherited from my uncle. He was an old-school electrician, the kind of guy who kept the manuals for everything he ever worked on. When he died, I found his basement stuffed with tool chests, schematics, even a shortwave radio that still smelled like cigarette smoke. Most people would have sold the junk. I didn't. I turned it into my arsenal. See, I was a blackout prepper. Not just canned food and bottled water like the doomsday TV guys. No, my obsession was the grid. I studied the Northeast blackout of 2003 like a war historian studies Gettysburg. I had notebooks filled with vulnerabilities in the PJM interconnection, the regional power grid that stretched across Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, and beyond. While neighbors spent weekends mowing lawns or grilling, I was in my basement, teaching myself how long a chest freezer could hold temp without power, 2 days if you don't open it, or how to wire a marine battery into a solar array. My friends called me paranoid. I called it foresight. And then, on a Friday night in October, the hum stopped. It happened at 7:13 p.m. I was in the kitchen, peeling open a can of Bush's baked beans, when the overhead light flickered. Just once, quick. Enough to make me pause. Then it went dark. The fridge gave one last click like a throat clearing. The neighborhood fell silent. I waited, counting. 1 Mississippi. 2. 10. No backup hum. The blackout had come. At first it wasn't panic. I lit 2 oil lamps, not candles because candles give off weak light and smell like nostalgia, not survival. I had kerosene lanterns with thick glass and steady flame. I placed one in the window, one on the kitchen counter. Then I did what I always told myself I'd do. I waited. Blackouts usually pop back within an hour. That's the standard expectation. And sure enough, I could hear the neighborhood react. Shouts of shit from a block over, a car alarm briefly hiccuping, dogs barking. People always think the worst part of a blackout is the dark. It's not. It's the noise. Without the TV, the fridge, the heater, you suddenly hear everything. Every cough, every creak in the floorboards, every neighbor swearing. I checked my watch. 7:23 p.m. That's when the first siren cut through the night. Now, Scranton isn't New York City, but we've got our share of emergency calls, traffic accidents on I-81, bar fights in town. But this wasn't one siren. This was 3. Maybe 4. They weren't racing past either. They seemed to circle the same area. Then a sound I'll never forget, gunshots. At first I thought it was fireworks. But no, the rhythm was wrong. Fireworks crack, fade, echo. This was sharp, violent, like someone slamming metal against stone. And it kept going. I turned off my lantern in the window. Darkness was safer. That's when the first scream tore through the night. Not a scream of fear. Not a drunk college girl shrieking on a dare. No. This one was guttural, cut short, like someone's throat being crushed mid-breath. Then came another. Closer. And another. I felt my stomach twist in on itself. My prepping notebooks had covered everything: EMP attacks, cascading grid failures, even cyber warfare. But I hadn't prepared for this sound. The sound of people being ripped apart. By 8 p.m. the neighborhood was chaos. Car doors slamming. People running. More sirens. The sharp crack of gunfire echoed like popcorn. I crouched by my second-floor window, binoculars pressed to my face, and scanned the cul-de-sac below. I saw shadows darting between cars. Some moved like regular people, frantic, stumbling. But others, they didn't move right. Their arms swung too loose like marionettes on strings. Their heads snapped in animal jerks, locking onto sounds. They didn't weave around obstacles so much as plow into them, falling and rising again with inhuman persistence. My neighbor across the street, John, a guy who once mocked me for hoarding water barrels, stumbled out his front door. His pajama shirt was soaked in blood. He waved his arms, staggering into the middle of the street. A woman followed him out. At least she used to be a woman. Her jaw hung at an angle that made me gag. Her face was slick, her skin gray in the lantern glow. She lunged at him, sank teeth into his throat, and dragged him down. John's scream cut short, and all I could do was watch. That was the first hour. And I knew with a sick clarity, this wasn't just a blackout. The world hadn't gone silent. It had started screaming. The worst part wasn't seeing John get torn apart. The worst part was how quickly the street went quiet again, like the darkness itself had swallowed the sound. I stayed frozen by the window, binoculars pressed so hard against my face that they left red circles on my skin. I didn't even blink. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but where? Into that? No. Instead, I did what preppers do best. I started cataloging. Time of event, approximately 7:48 p.m. Location, cul-de-sac 50 feet from my front door. Subject A, male mid-40s, known neighbor. Injured but alive when leaving house. Subject B, female mid-30s. Displayed abnormal aggression, uncoordinated but fast. Lethal bite attack. No hesitation. My hand was shaking so bad I could barely hold the pen, but I forced myself to keep writing. Documentation was control. Control was survival. The smell hit next. It crept in through the cracks of my old window frame, oily and coppery. Like raw meat left too long in the sun. I gagged, pulling my sweatshirt over my mouth. Outside shadows still moved. Not many. Not yet. I saw one slam full speed into a parked sedan, its head cracking the windshield like a dropped watermelon. It slid down, jaw dangling, then clawed back up. Over and over. Like it didn't even register pain. That's when my lantern sputtered. I whipped around. The flame was fine, but the kerosene was low. And that single flicker reminded me of something crucial. Light attracts. I doused both lanterns. Darkness swallowed the house. I sat in my living room with only the red glow of my watch face. The silence pressed in. Not silence exactly, I could still hear things. Scraping. Footsteps. Breathing maybe. And every few minutes, a wet tearing sound followed by silence. I forced myself to think tactically. That's what I'd always promised myself I'd do. Barricade points. I had reinforced my front and back doors months ago with steel brackets. Windows were double-paned but still vulnerable. Basement was safest if I needed to vanish. Supplies. Food for 6 months. Water barrels in the basement. 2 marine batteries charged, connected to a 200-watt solar panel in the backyard, though the blackout wouldn't matter if dawn never came. Weapons. Pennsylvania isn't strict on guns. I had a Mossberg 500 pump-action shotgun, 2 Glock 19s, and a crossbow I convinced myself was for silent hunting. Ammo, not enough. Never enough. I repeated those lists in my head like prayers. Because the alternative was listening to the screams outside. By 9:15 p.m. I couldn't sit still anymore. My survival notes from years ago kept circling in my brain. Intel is life. Sitting in a dark house without knowing the scope of the threat? That was suicide. So I powered on my shortwave radio. Static. Nothing but static. I scanned through frequencies, my palms slick with sweat. Then, at 10.7 megahertz, I caught fragments. Mass casualty, not containable. Shelter in place. National Guard en route. Byte transmission confirmed. The voice was frantic, cutting in and out. But I'd heard enough. Byte transmission. My throat went dry. This wasn't rioting. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't just some blackout chaos. This was infection. At 9:30, something pounded on my door. 3 heavy blows. Then silence. I froze. Every hair on my body stood straight. The pounding came again, rattling the frame. Whoever, whatever, was out there had weight behind it. I raised my shotgun, racking it quietly. The pounding stopped. Then came the scratching. Slow, deliberate, nails dragging down wood. I aimed at the door, my arms trembling. Sweat dripped into my eyes, stinging. And then, nothing. The sound moved away. I don't know how long I sat there, gun leveled, finger aching from hovering on the trigger. Eventually I checked my watch again. 10:12 p.m. Almost 3 hours since the power died. And all I could think was, I'd survived 3 hours. 9 more to go. If I could make it to dawn, maybe the guard really would roll in. Maybe I'd see headlights sweeping through the neighborhood, soldiers with rifles, helicopters thudding overhead. Maybe. But deep down I already knew. Nobody was coming. By 10:30 p.m. my living room felt like a coffin. Every creak in the floorboards made me flinch. Every gust rattling the siding sounded like claws. I tried to convince myself it was just nerves, that my prepper mind was spinning shadows into monsters. But then I'd remember John's scream, cut short in the street, and I knew this wasn't imagination. It was happening. I forced myself into routine. Routine kept the panic from chewing holes in my thoughts. Step 1. Check supplies. I slipped into the basement, flashlight covered with red film so the beam wouldn't spill through cracks. My barrels of water were untouched. Food bins stacked neatly. MREs in vacuum-sealed packs. I ran my hand over the lids like a priest blessing relics. Step 2. Confirm barricades. I tested the back door brace, pressed against the 2x4s nailed across the lower windows. Solid. For now. Step 3. Recon. I crept back upstairs, crouched under the window, and raised the binoculars. The cul-de-sac had changed. Bodies littered the asphalt. Some lay still, limbs twisted. Others twitched, rolling like fish on a dock. A few were crawling, dragging broken legs behind them as they clawed toward any sound. And then, under the flickering orange glow of a distant fire, I saw something worse. Kids. 2 of them. Barely teenagers, maybe younger. Their faces smeared dark. They weren't screaming. They weren't running. They were chewing. I snapped the blinds shut, while rising in my throat. I staggered into the kitchen and dry heaved over the sink. Nothing came up. My stomach was too knotted. When I could breathe again, I went to the pantry and pulled out one of my emergency ration bars. 3,600 calories compressed into a brick of sugar and oil. I chewed mechanically, not tasting it. I told myself it was fuel, nothing more. Because if I thought about what I'd just seen, I'd never eat again. At 11:04 p.m. the pounding came back. Not at the front door this time. At the side window. I froze in the hallway, shotgun aimed low. The glass rattled as something scraped across it, slow and steady. I forced myself to peek. A face. Not a stranger's. Mrs. Caldwell. She was my neighbor, 62 years old, always wore a wide-brimmed hat when gardening. She'd brought me zucchini bread once, back before I'd pushed everyone away with my paranoid rambling. Now her face was gray and slack, her eyes clouded white. She dragged her nails down the glass again and again, a dull squeal that made my teeth ache. For a split second I thought I saw her real self flicker through. Her mouth twitched, lips forming words I couldn't hear. Then she bared her teeth and slammed her forehead against the glass. I backed away, pulse hammering. I almost fired, but some last thread of humanity kept my finger off the trigger. Shooting her wouldn't save me. It would only burn ammo. I retreated to the basement, heart pounding so loud I swore it would draw them all to me. Down there, surrounded by concrete and canned beans, I finally let myself cry. Not loud. Not sobbing. Just silent tears that slid down my face, dripping onto my sweatshirt. I'd always told myself I was ready for the end. That I was built for it. That when the world collapsed I'd rise. But in that moment, curled against a water barrel with a shotgun across my knees, I felt smaller than I ever had. Because prepping can't save you from guilt, or loneliness, or the memory of your neighbors being eaten alive while you hide. By midnight I stopped checking the watch. Time had lost meaning. I measured the night in sounds, the wet crack of bones splitting, the glassy screech of nails on windows, the distant thud of gunfire, growing rarer as the hours passed. Somewhere past 1 a.m. the gunfire stopped entirely, and the silence that followed was worse than the screams. That was the last normal hour, because at 2 a.m. the scratching at the windows stopped, not because they gave up, but because they'd found something else, something bigger. And when the howling started, low, guttural, almost wolf-like but wrong in every way, I knew the blackout hadn't just taken the lights. It had taken the world. And I was alone in the dark. At first, the silence felt like mercy. After hours of clawing at my windows, of glass groaning under relentless nails, the sudden stillness was almost a relief. My shoulders sagged. I thought maybe they'd lost interest, wandered to some other poor soul's house. But then the howling started. It rose from somewhere down the block, not human, not even close. A long, guttural moan that cracked midway into a shriek. One voice at first, then a chorus, dozens layering over each other until the night shook with it. The scratching hadn't stopped. It had been replaced. I crept upstairs, every step a betrayal under my weight. I crouched beneath the living room window, fingers trembling as I raised the binoculars just enough to peek through the blinds. The cul-de-sac was alive. Not with people, with them. Dozens, maybe more. They weren't clawing at doors anymore. They were gathering in the street, heads jerking in unison at some unseen signal. Their bodies twitched like marionettes with tangled strings, spasming, then freezing, then all turning the same direction. And then I saw what they were turning toward. Movement. A pickup truck tearing down the road, headlights blazing, horn blaring. The driver was leaning out the window with a rifle, firing wildly into the swarm. He didn't make it 50 feet. They surged. Not stumbled, surged. As one. Bodies slammed against the truck, shattering windows. Hands tore at the doors. The horn blared one final note before being choked silent. The vehicle rocked, then collapsed under the weight of them all, climbing, ripping, feasting. I dropped the binoculars, gagging into my sleeve. The scratching hadn't stopped because they'd found new prey. And I knew with sick certainty, if I made a single mistake, I'd be next. I retreated to the basement, heart pounding. The walls felt thinner than paper now. My mind raced through contingencies. If they breached the windows, I had fallback in the basement panic corner, reinforced steel hatch leading to the old coal chute. If the house caught fire, I'd have to risk the backyard, make for the tree line behind the property. But the truth gnawed at me harder than any plan could silence. I wasn't ready. I'd spent years preparing for blackouts, for water shortages, for looters. I hadn't prepared for them. Around 3 a.m. the first real test came. I heard glass break upstairs. I froze, shotgun in hand, ears straining. A single shatter, then silence. Not followed by the chorus of moans I'd expected. Just one sound, which meant one of them was inside. I crept up the basement stairs, every muscle shaking. At the top, I killed the flashlight, crouched low and listened. A shuffle. What? Slow. In the kitchen. I raised the shotgun, inching forward. My heart hammered so loud I was sure it would give me away. Then I saw her. Not through blinds. Not across the street. But 5 feet away in the pale moonlight slanting through the broken window. Mrs. Caldwell. Her face was shredded where she'd smashed the glass to get in. Blood streamed down her chin. Her cloudy eyes locked on me the instant I moved. She shrieked, a sound that scraped bone, and lunged. I fired. The blast lit the kitchen, thunder in a coffin. Her skull snapped back, body crumpling. Silence returned. But it wasn't the relief I'd hoped for, because silence meant one thing. Every monster outside had heard the shot, and now they were coming. The blast was still ringing in my ears when I heard the first answering moan. Oh, drawn out. Followed by another. Then another. Until the night outside my broken kitchen window was a wall of sound, hundreds of voices stitched into one long scream. My stomach dropped. I had just rung the dinner bell. I bolted the basement door shut and braced a chair under the knob. Not much, but better than nothing. My hands shook so badly I fumbled the shotgun reload twice, dropping shells onto the linoleum. Each one that hit the floor echoed like a gunshot. Then came the first slam. Not at the door, at the siding. Something heavy hit the house hard enough to rattle the dishes in the cabinets. Then another thud, this time at the front porch. The groaning would told me they were climbing, testing, looking for weakness. I killed every light, crouched in the hallway, and forced myself to breathe through my nose. Slow. Controlled. Prepping rule number 1. Don't waste oxygen panicking. But panic was already winning. At 3:12 a.m., the kitchen window gave way. I heard the crunch of glass under feet. Heavy, dragging steps inside my house. I raised the shotgun, barrel trembling. A shadow lurched into view, too tall, too broad. Not Mrs. Caldwell this time. Someone bigger. I fired once. The shadow crumpled. But then another climbed through the window. And another. I was losing the house. I fell back to the basement stairs, adrenaline flooding my veins. As I yanked the door shut behind me, I heard claws, nails, hands, teeth, whatever they were using, scraping across the walls upstairs. My walls. My fortress. And then came the sound I dreaded most. The front door buckled. The steel brackets I'd installed shrieked as the wood bowed. Again. Again. Each slam echoed down the stairwell like a battering ram. They were coordinated now. Moving together. Like a hive. And I realized, no amount of prepping could turn a house into a bunker. Not against this. 3:30 a.m. The basement was dark except for my red-filtered flashlight. I pressed my ear to the concrete, listening. The scraping above grew louder. Boards splitting. Furniture crashing. They were inside. Dozens of them. I had two choices. Wait it out in the basement until they tore through. Or take the coal chute. The chute was a relic from when the house used to run on coal heat. I'd reinforced it, kept it sealed. It opened into the backyard just at the tree line. Perfect emergency exit. But using it meant leaving everything behind. Food, water, ammo. My life's work. I stared at the hatch, heart in my throat. I'd spent years preparing for this night, and now, if I wanted to survive, I had to abandon it all. The decision was made for me at 3:41 a.m. The basement door above exploded off its hinges. A tidal wave of bodies poured down the stairs, snarling, clawing, tumbling over each other in their hunger. I didn't think. I dove for the coal chute, wrenching the hatch open. Cold night air blasted my face. I squeezed through, shotgun scraping the edges, just as the first hands reached the bottom of the stairs. For a second, I was wedged, stuck between the world I'd built and the one collapsing into me. Then I kicked free, tumbled into the wet grass, and rolled into the trees. Behind me, my house, my fortress, roared with the sound of feeding. And for the first time I understood, prepping hadn't saved me. It had trapped me. The grass was wet and cold against my face. I lay still, cheek pressed to the earth, while the night behind me filled with the sound of feeding. My house, my fortress, was gone. Every 2x4 I nailed, every barrel I filled, every checklist I wrote, shredded in minutes. I wanted to run back, to fight, to claw it all back. But then I heard the moans echoing through the broken windows, dozens of voices twisting into one terrible chorus. No amount of ammo could silence that. So I crawled deeper into the treeline. The woods behind my property weren't wild, not really. Scranton suburbs fade into patches of forest, cut through with deer trails and the occasional ATV track. But at 4 o'clock in the morning, with no lights, no power, and monsters just 100 feet behind me, it felt like the deepest wilderness on earth. I moved slow, crouched low, shotgun ready. Every snapped twig under my boots felt like a flare going off. I kept glancing back, sure I'd see pale faces glowing in the moonlight, teeth gnashing as they followed me. But the horde stayed at the house. For now. After 20 minutes, I collapsed against a tree, chest heaving. I wanted to rest. God, I wanted to, but my prepper brain screamed at me, "Don't stop moving until you're safe." Except, where was safe? I thought about the maps I'd studied for years. Supply routes, substations, back roads. My brain flipped through them like flashcards, but none of them accounted for this. The blackout had been predictable. The infection wasn't. I pulled my pack around, the small one I'd managed to grab before fleeing. Inventory: 2 bottles of water, 3 ration bars, 1 box of shells half full, 1 flashlight with red filter, 1 shortwave radio. That was it. My entire life's work reduced to a pack I could carry in 2 hands. The weight of it almost broke me. At 4:23 a.m. I heard movement. Not behind me, ahead. In the brush. I froze, shotgun up. My finger hovered on the trigger, sweat dripping down my temple. The bushes rustled. Then a voice. "Don't shoot." Human. Weak, trembling, but human. A man stepped out, hands raised. Mid-30s, scruffy beard, hoodie smeared with mud. His eyes darted behind me like he expected the monsters any second. "Jesus," he whispered, voice cracking. "You saw them too, didn't you?" I didn't lower the gun. "Who are you?" I hissed. "Name's Eric. My car died on the way out of town. Been running since. Thought I was the last one left." He looked at me, really looked, and his eyes widened. "You've got a pack. Supplies. You prepped, didn't you?" I didn't answer. My grip on the shotgun tightened. Because in that moment, I realized something I'd never written in my notebooks, never considered in my plans. The dead weren't the only threat. The living were too. We sat in tense silence under the trees, the night pressing around us. Somewhere back at the house, the moans still echoed. Eric swallowed hard. "Listen. I'm not here to take anything. I don't want to die alone out here." His voice cracked, and for a moment I saw past the scruffy beard and the twitching hands. He was terrified. Same as me. But fear makes people dangerous. I thought about turning him away. About telling him to walk the other direction, vanish into the woods, and never cross my path again. But another sound reached us then, a howl. Close. Eric's eyes went wide. He looked at me like a drowning man looks at a lifeboat. And I knew my first major choice wasn't about bullets or barricades. It was about trust. The howl carried through the trees, low and guttural, closer than before. Eric flinched. "They're hunting." His voice was barely a whisper, but the way his body trembled said he believed it. I scanned the tree line, shotgun raised. The night was so black it felt like the forest swallowed the moonlight whole. Every shadow looked like a figure. Every gust of wind sounded like breath. Eric leaned closer. "We can't stay here." I hated that he was right. We moved. Slow, crouched, deliberate. My boots sank into damp leaves, shotgun heavy in my arms. Eric trailed half a step behind me, his hoodie snagging on branches. He tried to stay quiet, but fear makes people clumsy. Every time he stumbled, I clenched my jaw. Part of me wanted to ditch him, melt into the dark and let him be the noise that drew attention. But then I remembered his eyes when he said, "I don't want to die alone." And the truth was, neither did I. By 5:12 a.m., we reached a clearing. The remains of an old logging road cut through the trees, half swallowed by weeds. I held up a hand to stop Eric. We crouched at the tree line listening. At first, nothing. Then, movement. Not moans. Not the dragging shuffle I'd come to recognize. Engines. A pair of headlights bounced down the overgrown road, sweeping across the clearing. A pickup truck, mud-caked, bed-piled high with crates. Figures in the back clutched rifles, scanning the woods. Eric's eyes lit up. Survivors. He started to step forward, but I grabbed his arm, yanking him down. "Or looters," I hissed. The truck slowed, engine rumbling low. One of the men in the bed stood, sweeping a spotlight across the trees. The beam carved through the dark, slicing just inches from where we crouched. I held my breath. The man lowered the light, shouted something to the driver, and the truck rolled on. Eric let out a shaky laugh. See? People. We could get shot in the head, I snapped. I'd seen this before in Blackout reports, even without monsters involved. Desperate men with trucks and guns didn't stop to share rations. They took. And I wasn't about to become their next supply cache. We waited until the growl of the engine faded into the distance before moving again. Eric's jaw was tight, his eyes darting toward me. So what, we just hide forever? You think you can make it through this alone? I didn't answer right away. My prepper brain wanted to say yes. I'd built my entire life around surviving solo, cutting ties, not depending on anyone. But standing there in the pre-dawn dark, with howls behind us and looters ahead, I knew the truth. Nobody survives alone. Not really. I looked at Eric. His hands shook, but his grip on the rusty tire iron he carried was white-knuckled. He was scared, but he wasn't useless. We moved together, I said finally. Quiet. Careful. No trust until it's earned. Understand? He nodded too quickly. I didn't believe him. Not yet. But for the first time since the blackout began, I felt a flicker of something I thought I'd lost. Hope. At 5:47 a.m., the first light of dawn bled into the sky. Not enough to see clearly, but enough to turn the black forest into shades of gray. And in that dim light I saw them. Figures. Dozens. Standing motionless among the trees, faces slack, eyes cloudy. Not moving. Just waiting. Eric's breath hitched. Jesus. They hadn't noticed us yet. But as the wind shifted, carrying our scent, heads began to turn. One by one. And I realized the sun wasn't going to save us. Daylight only meant we could see the monsters coming. The first rays of sun cut through the trees like knives. For a second I thought maybe the light would scatter them. Monsters belong to the dark. That's the rule, isn't it? But rules meant nothing now. Because the figures in the trees didn't vanish. They stirred. Gray skin catching pale dawn light, jaws twitching, hands flexing. Their cloudy eyes locked on us, one by one, like bulbs flicking on in a row. Eric swore under his breath. What the fuck do we do? I forced myself to breathe slow, steady. Panic wastes oxygen. Panic wastes choices. Stay low. Stay quiet. Move. We crouched, inching along the tree line. Every step cracked leaves, snapped twigs. Each sound drew heads our way, bodies jerking unnaturally as they turned. The moans started soft, then louder, then answered by more voices deeper in the woods. I risked a glance back and my gut twisted. The horde wasn't shambling. They were converging. Not fast, not sprinting, but deliberate. Herding. Like they weren't hunting individuals. Like they were driving us somewhere. We broke into a jog, branches whipping our faces, the forest alive with groans. The clearing came sudden. An old service road, gravel cracked and moss-choked. Eric stumbled to a stop, gasping. We can't outrun them. We don't outrun. We outthink. I scanned the road. To the left, it curved downhill deeper into the trees. To the right, it climbed toward a chain-link fence half crushed by fallen branches. Beyond it, rooftops. A neighborhood. My stomach dropped. Going toward people meant going toward more chaos. Looters, panicked families, God knows what. But the alternative was letting the horde pen us in like cattle. I looked at Eric. Fence. Now. We sprinted. The fence was slick with morning dew, rust flaking into my palms. I slung the shotgun over my back and hauled myself up. Metal groaned under my weight. Eric scrambled beside me, breath ragged. Halfway over, I glanced back. They were closer. Dozens of them, spilling into the clearing, their movements jerky but unified. Their faces lifted toward us as one. Eric dropped down the far side with a grunt. I followed, landing hard, knees screaming. We didn't stop. We tore through overgrown backyards, past swing sets swallowed by weeds, past houses with doors ajar and curtains fluttering in broken windows. The neighborhood was dead. Not empty. Dead. At 6:42 a.m., we ducked into the shell of a two-story home. Furniture overturned, TV smashed, streaks of dried blood across the walls. The air stank of rot and mildew. Eric collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. We can't keep this up. We need food. Water. Something. I scanned the kitchen. Cabinets hanging open, cans scattered. Someone had looted it already. But then I spotted the basement door, padlock snapped. Basements meant storage. I raised a finger to my lips, motioning Eric to stay put, and crept down the stairs. The air grew damp, cold, and that's when I heard it. Not moaning, not shuffling, whimpering. Human. I froze, shotgun leveled. In the far corner, behind a barricade of crates, a figure stirred. Small, frail. A girl no older than 10. Her face was streaked with dirt, eyes wide with terror. When she saw me, she didn't scream. She whispered, "Please, don't leave me." The barrel of my shotgun lowered on instinct. Eric's voice hissed from upstairs. "What is it? What's down there?" And suddenly I realized, my plans had never accounted for this. Not for children. Not for decisions that weren't black and white. Supplies I could ration. Ammo I could count. But the cost of bringing another human into this fight? That math was Messier. And as the girl's wide eyes locked on mine, I knew survival had just become something I couldn't chart in a notebook. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it hit me harder than any scream could. "Please, don't leave me." I kept the shotgun trained low, my hands shaking. In my mind I flipped through every prepper calculation I'd ever made. Calories, water, ammo, escape routes. Everything was math. But this wasn't numbers. This was a child. Eric's voice came again from upstairs, sharp, impatient. "What the hell's down there?" The girl's eyes widened at the sound. She clutched a ragged blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Don't let him hurt me." I swallowed hard, backing up the stairs. Eric stood waiting at the top, tire iron in hand, sweat dripping down his face. His eyes searched mine. "Well?" "There's a kid," I said. His expression froze, then twisted. "A kid? You're kidding me." "No joke." He dragged a hand down his face. "Jesus Christ. That's dead weight." The words burned. Maybe because I'd thought them too the moment I saw her. "She's alive," I said. "Yeah, for how long?" "You know what happens to kids in shit like this. They slow you down, they scream, they run out of food faster than anyone. You drag her with us, we die." His voice was firm, logical, cruel. And damn it, part of me agreed. I went back down. The girl hadn't moved. She watched me like a cornered animal, ready to bolt if I twitched wrong. "What's your name?" I asked. She hesitated. "Maddie." "Where's your family, Maddie?" Her lips trembled. "They went out when the lights went off. Said they'd be right back. They never came." I felt something in my chest crack. Eric stomped down the stairs behind me. "We're wasting time. Those things out there are moving. You heard them." Maddie flinched, shrinking behind the crates. Eric pointed his tire iron at her. "We leave her, we live. We take her, we die." The silence stretched. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then, without thinking, I said it. "She comes with us." Eric's face twisted like I'd slapped him. "Are you insane? You're really gonna throw away survival for being human?" I snapped. He froze. The words shocked me as much as him. For years, my prepping had been about detachment. Cold, hard numbers. But staring at Maddie's dirt-streaked face, I realized something. All the food, ammo, and water in the world didn't mean a damn thing if there was no one left worth saving. Eric cursed, pacing. "You're making a mistake. She'll get us killed. You'll see." Maybe he was right. Maybe bringing her was suicide. But in that moment, the math didn't matter. I offered Maddie my hand. She hesitated, then slipped her small fingers into mine. Her grip was weak, but it was enough. By 7:40 a.m. we were back on the move. Maddie clung to my side, Eric trailing a few paces behind, his silence heavy. The neighborhood stretched around us, silent but not still. Curtains twitched. Shapes moved in upper windows. Sometimes they were human. Sometimes not. We kept to the alleys, ducking behind fences, skirting the moans that drifted from open doors. Every step was a reminder. The city wasn't empty. It was filling. And now, every plan I had wasn't just for me. It was for us. Eric muttered, "You're gonna regret this." I didn't answer, because regret was a luxury. Survival was the only currency left. And I just made the most expensive choice of my life. We kept moving east through the neighborhood, the sun lifting higher, burning mist off the roofs. Daylight made the damage impossible to ignore. Cars abandoned mid-street, doors open, groceries spilled across asphalt. Windows smashed. Blood smeared across sidewalks and trails that stopped abruptly, as if the people who left them were simply erased. Maddie clung to my side, blanket dragging, her steps small and uneven. Every few feet, Eric shot me a glare over her head. He didn't have to say anything. His eyes screamed it. "She'll get us killed." By 8:10 a.m. Maddie was stumbling, her lips pale. She hadn't eaten in days, maybe longer. My pack felt suddenly lighter, not because it was empty, but because I knew every ration bar inside now had to stretch further. We cut through a cul-de-sac, past houses with toys still scattered on lawns. I spotted one with curtains drawn and the front door ajar. Looted? Maybe. But looted didn't mean empty. I motioned Eric to watch the street, then led Maddie inside. The air hit me first, stale, sour, layered with something metallic. Blood. The living room was trashed, furniture overturned, glass crunching under my boots. In the corner, a family photo hung crooked. A mom, a dad, 2 kids, one Maddie's age. My stomach knotted. Kitchen first. Drawers open, cabinets raided. But luck. Under the sink, wedged behind a bucket of cleaning supplies, 3 sealed bottles of water. Still cold. I stuffed them in the pack. "Check upstairs," Eric whispered from the doorway. I hesitated. Upstairs was risk. But supplies meant survival. I gave Maddie the flashlight, red filter on. "Stay by the door. Don't move." Her eyes widened, but she nodded. The stairs creaked under my boots. Each step a warning shot to anything hiding above. The hallway smelled worse. A bedroom door hung open. Inside I found the source. 2 bodies. A man and woman sprawled on the carpet, their throats torn out. Skin gray, eyes milky. They hadn't stayed down, not right away. Bullet holes marked their skulls. Someone had been here. Someone who knew what they were doing. I froze at the sound, a floorboard groaning behind me. I spun, shotgun raised. "Eric." He held up his hands. "Relax. Just checking." His eyes slid past me to the corpses. He didn't flinch. "You see? This is what happens when you try to save people. You end up dead." I lowered the shotgun, jaw tight. "Or maybe alive long enough to make a choice." He sneered. "You're blinded by that kid. She's not family. She's not your responsibility. She's dead weight." I pushed past him, heading back downstairs. Maddie was by the door, flashlight shaking in her small hands. When she saw me, relief flooded her face. I handed her a bottle of water. She drank like she'd never tasted it before. Eric watched, silent, jaw clenched. For a moment it was quiet. Then the sound came, pounding, rhythmic against the back door. The 3 of us froze. Maddie whimpered, water bottle slipping from her hands. Eric hissed, "We've got to move. Now." The pounding grew louder. More hands. More voices. Moans rising into a chorus. The house wasn't shelter. It was bait. And we'd just taken it. The pounding shook the walls. At first it was just the back door, rattling on broken hinges. Then the windows joined in, fists slamming, glass cracking. The house groaned under the weight of bodies pressing against it. Eric's face twisted in panic. "They smelled us. We're done." I scanned the room fast. Exits, cover, weapons. Prepper math. Front door, blocked by 2, maybe 3 shapes already pressing against the glass. Back door, seconds from collapse. That left the side window halfway boarded, kitchen sink beneath it. Up, I barked. Through the kitchen. Now. Eric didn't argue. He yanked the boards loose with his tire iron, wood splintering. Maddie cried out as the first window shattered behind us, glass raining onto the carpet. A hand reached through the broken pane, skin shredded, nails black. Another followed. Then a face, lips gone, teeth clacking. Go. I shoved Maddie toward the kitchen. Eric hauled her up onto the counter and boosted her through the gap. She disappeared into the daylight with a grunt. Eric scrambled after, cursing under his breath. The back door exploded inward. They poured in. I fired once. The blast echoed through the house, ringing in my ears. A figure toppled, chest blooming red, but 3 more clambered over it. I climbed onto the counter, shotgun slung, boots slipping on broken dishes. A hand clamped onto my ankle, cold, iron strong. I kicked hard. Bones cracked. I hauled myself through the window, landing hard in the wet grass outside. Eric grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet. Move. Maddie was already running, blanket trailing, small legs pumping. The moans followed. We cut through the yard, hurdling a fence into the next lot. The neighborhood was awake now, windows rattling, doors buckling, figures spilling into the streets. Eric kept glancing back, face twisted with fury. This is on you. You slowed us down for her. She's alive. I snapped. That's enough. He didn't answer. But the way he gripped the tire iron tighter told me the fight wasn't over. Not with the dead, not between us. By 9:40 a.m., we collapsed in the shadow of an abandoned strip mall. The parking lot was a graveyard of cars, some burned, some still smeared with dried blood. Maddie curled against the curb, exhausted, clutching her blanket like armor. Eric paced. We can't keep doing this. She's slowing us down. You know it. I leveled my gaze at him. She comes with us. End of story. His jaw clenched. He leaned close, voice low, venomous. You're gonna get us both killed. And when it happens, I'll make damn sure it's on you. For the first time, I realized I might survive the dead. But the living at my side could still bury me. The strip mall looked like any other. Peeling signs, broken glass, weeds splitting the asphalt. But in the blackout dawn, it felt like a mausoleum. Shadows pooled under the awnings. A toppled shopping cart lay on its side, wheels still turning in the breeze. Eric crouched low, scanning the storefronts. Pharmacy. If there's anything left, that's where we'll find it. I nodded. Food, water, meds, currency in a world where paper money meant nothing. Maddie clung to my arm, silent but trembling. Her eyes darted to the darkened windows as if she knew monsters hid behind them. We crept toward the pharmacy, boots crunching on shattered glass. I forced every step to be deliberate, measured. My heart pounded, but noise would kill faster than fear. The door was already cracked open. Looted. I pushed inside, shotgun ready. Shelves lay bare, pill bottles scattered across the tile. The air reeked of antiseptic and something coppery underneath. Blood. Eric knelt, rummaging through a drawer. Empty. They took it all. Not all, I muttered. Behind the counter, half hidden under a toppled crate, I found a box of gauze, 2 rolls of tape, a half-used bottle of antibiotics. Not much, but better than nothing. I stuffed them in the pack. Then Maddie gasped. I spun, shotgun leveled. In the back corner, behind the shelves, a body stirred. At first I thought it was dead, skin gray, jaw slack. But then its chest rose, shuddering, shallow. A man. Alive. He lifted his head, blood bubbling at his lips. His eyes locked on mine, wide with terror. Please? His voice was a rasp. Don't leave me. The words ripped through me, echoing Maddie's plea in the basement. Eric didn't hesitate. He lifted the tire iron. He's bitten. You know what that means. The man coughed, crimson splattering the tiles. I'm not, Not one of them. Not yet. Maddie whimpered, clinging tighter to me. Eric's voice was sharp, cold. We waste time on him, we're dead. Make the call. The math spun in my head. Supplies. Time. Risk. One more survivor meant one more mouth to feed, one more chance to draw the horde. But leaving him meant more than numbers. It meant choosing who deserved to live. I raised the shotgun. The man's eyes widened. He shook his head weakly, tears cutting lines through the grime on his face. Maddie whispered, "Don't." Eric snarled, "Do it." And I froze. Because in that moment, survival wasn't about guns or rations. It was about the kind of world we were saving, if there was even a world left to save. Before I could move, the decision was ripped away. The back door burst inward with a crash. Figures poured through, half a dozen moaning, teeth snapping. The wounded man screamed, a raw animal sound. The horde fell on him in seconds. Eric grabbed Maddie, dragging her toward the front. "Move now." I fired once, twice, clearing a path, the blast deafening in the confined space. We stumbled back into the daylight, glass crunching under our boots. Behind us, the screams cut off, and all I could hear was Maddie's whisper over and over. "Why didn't you save him?" We ran. The moans followed, echoing through the strip mall parking lot, bouncing off crumbling walls. My lungs burned, every breath tearing like glass. Eric dragged Maddie by the arm, her blanket trailing in the dirt. She stumbled, crying out, but he didn't slow. "Highway," he shouted, pointing east. "We get to the highway, we've got options." I hated that he was right. Roads meant escape. Roads meant routes out of this dying town. But roads also meant exposure. The horde spilled from the pharmacy, sunlight glinting off teeth and eyes. Dozens now, maybe more. We didn't have a choice. By 11:15 a.m. we reached the overpass. The highway stretched before us, a frozen river of metal. Cars jammed bumper to bumper, some with doors hanging open, others still smeared with blood. The silence was worse than the noise. A battlefield after the last scream. Eric climbed onto the hood of a sedan, scanning ahead. "If we cut through the cars, we can make it to the on-ramp. Maybe find something that runs." I hauled Maddie up beside me. Her small hand clutched mine like a lifeline. The silence broke. A single moan, low, guttural. Then another. Shapes rose from between the cars. Crawling first, then standing, their movements jerky. 1, 3, 5. A dozen. The highway wasn't empty. It was a feeding ground. We threaded through the cars, ducking low, keeping our steps light. My shotgun felt heavier with every breath. Eric moved ahead, tire iron ready, muttering curses under his breath. Maddie tripped on a loose shoe, sprawling against the asphalt. Her cry cut the silence like a blade. Heads turned. Eyes found us. The dead began to move. Eric spun, fury flashing. "I told you. She's going to get us killed." I yanked Maddie up, heart hammering. "Keep moving." The horde surged. Hands clawed at doors, bodies slamming against hoods. A car alarm shrieked, blaring across the highway, drawing more from the shadows. We ran, weaving through twisted metal. My pack snagged on a side mirror. I ripped free, leaving scraps of canvas fluttering. At 11:47 a.m., we reached the on-ramp. Clearer space, fewer cars. But open ground meant no cover. Eric stopped, chest heaving. His face was pale, twisted with something darker than fear. "She slows us down," he gasped. "She ends us. If we want to live, we drop her." Maddie clung to my leg, tears streaking her dirt-caked face. I raised the shotgun between us. Eric's eyes widened. "You'd choose her over me?" The moans grew louder, closer. Shadows spilled onto the on-ramp. "I'd choose humanity," I said. His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he'd swing the tire iron at me. Then he turned and bolted up the ramp, away from us. The horde closed in, a tide of flesh and teeth. I lifted Maddie into my arms, her weight light but burning. My legs screamed as I pushed forward, step after step, lungs on fire. By 11:59 a.m. we crested the ramp. The highway stretched ahead, littered with wrecks, smoke rising in the distance. Maddie's voice was a whisper in my ear. "Where's Eric?" I didn't answer, because the truth was Eric had made his choice, and I'd made mine. The first 12 hours were over. The blackout wasn't temporary. The dead weren't slowing. And as the noon sun beat down on the ruined highway, I understood the brutal truth. I had spent years preparing for this moment, and I was still not ready. The sun was high now, beating down on the blacktop, turning the air into a wavering haze. Cars stretched for miles, a rusting artery clogged with metal corpses. Some still smoked, others had been stripped bare. Windows were shattered, doors left hanging open. It was as if every driver had vanished mid-commute, leaving only wreckage in their place. I adjusted Maddie on my hip. She was too light for her age, all bone and trembling muscle, but every step made my legs scream. The silence pressed heavy, until it wasn't silence at all. It was breathing. Shapes moved under the cars. Hands reached through shattered windows. Some crawled, dragging themselves on broken limbs, others lurched upright with jerks and snaps. The highway wasn't abandoned. It was saturated. Maddie whimpered, "Where do we go?" I scanned the overpass signs. I-81 South, Harrisburg. I-81 North, Binghamton. Neither meant safety. But Harrisburg was closer. Population centers meant supplies. Population centers also meant death. Survival was about balance. Risk weighed against reward. "We head south," I muttered. By 12:37 p.m. the heat was suffocating. My shirt clung with sweat. Maddie stumbled beside me now, refusing to be carried, her chin set in stubborn silence. The groans grew louder. We weren't alone on the ramp. A cluster of them emerged between the cars ahead. 7, maybe 8, blocking the path forward. Their faces were blistered from the sun, jaws slack, teeth stained black. I chambered around. Ammo was precious, but so was time. "Stay behind me," I whispered. The blast echoed across the highway, deafening. One fell. Then another. But the sound carried. More heads turned. More bodies rose. The highway began to move. Maddie screamed as they surged from between the cars, a tide of rotting flesh. My shells burned faster than I could count. 3 shots. 5. 6. Each one dropped a body, but more filled the gaps. I grabbed Maddie's hand, yanking her toward the shoulder. A drainage ditch cut alongside the ramp, overgrown with weeds. We scrambled down, mud sucking at our boots. The horde spilled over the edge behind us, tumbling into the ditch, crushing each other as they clawed forward. I shoved Maddie up the opposite side, my muscles screaming. She scrambled onto the grass, reaching back for me. Hands caught my pack, dragging me down. I roared, twisting, shotgun but smashing into a skull. Bone cracked. I tore free, scrambling up the slope. Maddie's hands latched onto mine, pulling with every ounce of her small strength. Together, we crawled onto the shoulder, collapsing in the grass as the moans swelled below. The horde pressed in the ditch, writhing like a single massive body, jaws gnashing inches from the edge. But they couldn't climb. For now. At 12:55 p.m., we staggered into the treeline beyond the highway. The forest swallowed us again, damp and cool compared to the burning asphalt. Maddie clung to my arm, her small body trembling. "Are we safe?" she whispered. I looked back at the highway, the sea of figures spilling endlessly between the cars, the smoke curling skyward. "No," I said, because safe wasn't a word that existed anymore. The forest was cooler, damp earth soft underfoot, but the quiet felt sharper than the highway's roar. Maddie leaned against me, her steps slowing. "I'm tired," she whispered. I knew the feeling. My legs ached, throat raw from thirst, muscles burning from the shotgun's recoil. Every ounce of me screamed to stop, but stopping meant dying. "Just a little further," I said, though I didn't believe it. That's when the voice came. Don't move. I froze. A shape stepped from behind a tree, lean, ragged, rifle raised. The barrel glinted in the thin shafts of light. Behind him, more figures emerged. 5, maybe 6. Dirt-streaked clothes, makeshift weapons, eyes hollow from hunger and sleepless nights. Survivors. The man with the rifle squinted at me, finger brushing the trigger. You're alive. Barely, I said. His gaze slid to Maddie. You picked up a stray. She's with me, I snapped. Cute, he muttered. That'll last until she slows you down. The words echoed Eric's venom from the highway. My grip on the shotgun tightened. A woman pushed forward, younger, hair tied back with a blood-stained bandana. She placed a hand on the rifleman's arm. Easy, Rick. They've got a kid. That counts for something. Counts for nothing, Rick growled. Every mouth's a drain. Better than leaving her to die, the woman shot back. Their argument simmered, tension crackling. Maddie clung to my leg, silent but wide-eyed. Finally, Rick lowered the rifle, barely. You come with us, you pull your weight. No dead weight. No charity. I nodded slowly. Deal. Because deals were currency. And in this world, breaking one was as deadly as a bite. By 1:40 p.m. we followed them deeper into the woods. Their camp sat in a hollow, half-hidden by trees. A fire pit ringed with stones, 2 tents patched with duct tape, a blue tarp stretched overhead. It wasn't much, but it was more than I had. Maddie collapsed near the fire pit, clutching her blanket, eyes fluttering shut. The woman with the bandana crouched beside her, offering a canteen. Name's Claire. Don't let Rick get to you. He's just tired. Tired gets people killed, I muttered, but I took the canteen. The water was lukewarm, metallic, but it tasted like life. Claire's gaze searched mine. You're not from here, are you? Pennsylvania. South of Scranton. She nodded slowly. We're from Harrisburg. Or, what's left of it. Her eyes darkened. You don't want to go south. At 1:58 p.m., Rick paced the edge of camp, rifle resting against his shoulder. His voice carried sharp like broken glass. Don't get comfortable, he said. You're here because I allow it. That kid steps out of line, you drag her out. Understand? My fingers brushed the shotgun slung across my chest. For now, I bit back the words clawing at my throat. Because the dead weren't the only predators out here. Some of the living were worse. The forest seemed quiet at first, almost normal. Birds called somewhere overhead, the wind rustled through leaves, Maddie clinging to my side. Then came the scream. Not human. Not quite animal. Claire's head snapped up. They're here. From the tree-line, a horde surged, not dozens this time but hundreds spilling from the shadows. Sunlight glinted off teeth and eyeless faces. The sound of bodies shoving through brush was a wave of terror. Rick barked orders. Barricade. Now. The camp erupted into chaos. Tents collapsed as people scrambled, dragging crates to block the entrances. Fires flared as fuel spilled over rocks. I grabbed Maddie, keeping her close. Stay low, I hissed. A figure lunged from behind a tree, infected, arms twisted unnaturally. I blasted it with my shotgun, sending it back into the brush. Another followed immediately. The camp was under siege. Inside the largest tent, Rick's authority cracked. He shouted orders, but people were panicking. One of the survivors, a wiry man named Saul, tripped over a crate and fell, screaming as the infected converged. I stepped in, firing the shotgun again, felling 2 more. Maddie clutched my arm, wide-eyed. Rick cursed, pushing past me. You're slowing me down. Pull her back. I didn't move. Claire stepped between us. Enough. Either we survive as a unit or we all die. The truth hit like a hammer. This wasn't just about survival from the dead. It was survival from ourselves. The breach lasted 10 minutes that felt like hours. By some miracle, the camp held. The fires and barricades bought us time, the horde unable to penetrate fully. But the air was thick with smoke, blood, and the unspoken knowledge. The next wave wouldn't wait. The horde retreated into the forest. Silence fell like a weight, broken only by Maddie's soft whimpers. Rick glared at me, teeth gritted. "This is your fault." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You brought her. That kid slowed us down. People almost died because of her." Claire intervened, voice tight. "Stop. She's not the problem. Your attitude is." I knelt by Maddie, checking her for cuts or bruises. Her small hands trembled, but she was alive. That's all that mattered. Rick spat on the ground. "I don't care. If it comes down to it, I'd leave her." I slammed the butt of my shotgun on a crate. "No. You don't get to make that choice." A silence settled. Maddie looked up, eyes wide, gripping my shirt. I realized then she was more than a symbol of survival. She was a tether, a reminder that humanity mattered even when every day was death. Later, a small group went scavenging while the camp patched barricades. I volunteered to go with them. Maddie protested. "I want to help," she said. "You help by staying alive," I told her. "That's the hardest work right now." Rick sneered. "You're soft. Soft kills people out here." Maybe he was right. But softness was the last piece of my soul I wasn't willing to trade. The gas station sat at the side of a crumbling highway, its pumps rusted, canopy sagging. Inside we found some canned goods, bottled water, and a few looted packs of ammunition. But the place wasn't empty. A small group of survivors had beaten us there. 5 men, 3 women, armed with whatever they could scavenge. "Hands where we can see them," one yelled. We froze, weapons raised. I motioned for Maddie to stay low behind a car. She crouched, trembling. Negotiation failed almost immediately. One of the armed survivors charged, swinging a crowbar. The fight exploded. Glass shattered, bullets flew, bodies fell. I kept Maddie behind me, blasting anything that came close. By the time the dust settled, half the gas station's occupants were dead, ours included. Smoke and blood clung to the walls. Maddie clung to my legs, silent. I wiped her hair from her face. "It's over, for now." Rick appeared from behind, gun smoking. "I told you kids, slow everything down." I raised my shotgun, hand steady despite the adrenaline. "She's alive. That's enough." Claire grabbed my arm. "We need to move. Now." And we did. Through the crumbling highway, past the abandoned cars, into the forest again, leaving carnage behind. The forest grew darker under the late afternoon sun. Shadows lengthened, turning familiar shapes into threats. Maddie clutched my hand as we trudged through underbrush, the smell of smoke from the gas station still lingering. Rick and Claire led the group. Tension hummed like static. Every crack of a twig, every caw of a crow, set nerves on edge. I scanned the tree line. Signs of infection were everywhere. Torn clothing, half-eaten corpses, scattered blood. The horde wasn't slowing. It was spreading. "South," I said, pointing toward the broken highway. "We need supplies, but we can't stay near roads. Too exposed." Rick scoffed. "You think you're the only prepper in the woods? Don't get cute." Claire stepped in. "We need him. And the kid." I realized then, Maddie wasn't just survival currency. She was a lens through which we measured ourselves. If we failed her, we weren't surviving, we were just animals running blind. By 5:30 p.m., the group found a clearing. They made camp for the moment, a small circle of tarps and logs. Fires flared, but smoke rose too openly. Rick paced, rifle slung. "This place won't last long." I agreed silently. My gut told me the horde was nearby. Sure enough, groans began drifting from the trees. Slow, then building. Not all of them. Not yet. But enough. The sun dipped lower. The forest shadows deepened. Maddie whispered, "Will they come?" "Yes," I said. "And we'll have to survive anyway." The attack came just after 6. From the treeline, infected burst forward in a tide of snapping jaws and jerking limbs. Fires flared, shadows dancing across the chaos. Rick barked orders, but discipline cracked instantly. Survivors screamed, scattered, and for the first time I saw human panic match the terror of the dead. Claire fought to rally people. I grabbed Maddie, dragging her behind me. Bullets pinged off trees. The horde poured into the clearing. I shot as I ran, one round after another. Maddie's grip on my arm tightened with each scream behind us. The camp was overrun in minutes. We escaped into the shadows, leaving carnage behind. Rick, Claire, and half the group disappeared into chaos. Whether dead or gone, I didn't know. Only Maddie and I remained. We stumbled into another ravaged road. Maddie exhausted, I slung the shotgun over my shoulder. Then a familiar voice called out, "Need a hand?" Eric. I froze. My jaw tightened. He looked leaner, dirtier, worse than before. His tire iron in hand, eyes cold, mouth twisted into a grin. "You left me," I said. "Did I?" he replied, stepping closer. "Or did you slow me down? Choices are brutal out here. You think you're the hero?" Maddie hid behind me, trembling. The world had narrowed to a single equation: trust versus survival. Eric's approach was lethal. "I won't let you touch her," I said, voice steady, shotgun ready. He laughed, a harsh sound. "She slows you down. You're soft. She's dead weight." The horde stirred in the distance, drawn by our voices. We didn't have time for a fight. Not yet. I made a choice. We ran. Through woods, over broken asphalt, into darkening trees. Maddie pressed against me, eyes wide, heart hammering in sync with mine. Eric didn't follow. Not yet. The sun sank behind the horizon. Twilight stretched across Pennsylvania like a shroud. We collapsed by a small creek, the water cold against our hands. Maddie curled against my chest, exhausted but alive. I surveyed the world around us. A forest scarred by humanity, roads littered with corpses, fire smoke lingering in the distance. The first 12 hours were over. I had survived. Maddie had survived. But survival wasn't just about bullets, food, or fire. It was about choices, which lives mattered and which ones we could stomach letting go. Tonight we would sleep lightly. Tomorrow the world would still be a graveyard. And I would have to decide again. Because the blackout wasn't over. The dead weren't stopping. And the living were often worse.